So time to look at some of the transfer stories of the day, and there's been some breaking news this afternoon. We'll cover that ground as well with transfer expert Ben Jacobs. Hi, Ben.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good, thank you. So this Jack Grealish story seems to have built a bit of pace, doesn't it, Alex, since we've been on here? Everton apparently having conversations with City about Grealish. What do we know?
Yeah, we knew actually 6 weeks or so ago that Everton were interested in a loan for Jack Grealish. But at that point, of course, Manchester City were keeping their options open. Now we're heading into a situation, I suppose, like when Calvin Phillips went on loan from Manchester City, where it might suit both Manchester City and Grealish to do a loan. Grealish's priority is to play regularly because as much as it may seem that he's kind of shut out from opportunities at Manchester City, he's still very much in Thomas Tuchel's plans ahead of the World Cup. So I think Grealish is open to Everton. These talks between Everton and Manchester City started early last month, and they've been picked up in the last 24 or 48 hours. But what complicates it is the fact that Manchester City are still leaning towards a permanent exit. So if it's a loan, they would ideally like an obligation. And then Grealish's wage as well, which would have to drop significantly. Otherwise, Everton might not be able to pull the deal off. But Everton are working on this one. Some suggestions in the last 24 hours that Tottenham have made an inquiry as well, again around a loan with a buy option. What we learned from Spurs sources earlier in the window was that they were not moving for Jack Grealish, but obviously Son has departed to LAFC. James Maddison is now injured. We wait and see the severity of that. So could Tottenham come into the mix here as well? At the moment, no indication that they're advancing, but they made an informal call to understand the situation. And this is going to be key to everything. Do Manchester City sanction a loan? If so, Everton are prepared to move ahead. If they don't, then suddenly there's a much smaller pool of suitors that can essentially afford Jack Grealish.
Yeah. We were chatting, weren't we, Alex, to Tim Vickery earlier on, and the word out in Brazil is that although Liverpool have agreed a fee with Al Hilal, the player is still undecided about whether he wants to go there.
Yeah, I think undecided is maybe a little bit too strong because Darwin Nunes opened the door to Saudi Arabia in January when it was Al Hilal that made an offer, 70 million euros then. And at the time, it was Liverpool that said, we run our data and we think he's more valuable to us to get the Premier League win over the line. So they kept Darwin Nunes, but he was actually very open to Saudi mid-season and once again is now in advanced talks. And my understanding is there's no guarantee that Darwin Nunes will be part of the Community Shield. What may happen is this could linger on, and then Liverpool's plan, as they showed in pre-season as well, is they'll keep playing Nunes because he got 5 goals in pre-season. But there's also a chance that in the next kind of 12 to 24 hours, this turns from advanced talks to a done deal on the player side. And then Liverpool are prepared to finalise this transfer very quickly. We've heard reports in the last 24 hours that a full club-to-club agreement is in place. My understanding is that verbally, yes, there is some substance to that now, but the fixed fee is really only the thing locked at the moment, and Liverpool are still waiting to see whether a formal offer from a kind of verbal agreement arrives and matches their expectations from conversations that have been led by Richard Hughes. 53 million euros plus add-ons. We don't yet know the final amount, and at the moment Liverpool are waiting to see whether Nunes agrees today. If he does so, he'll say his goodbyes tomorrow and he'll go before the Community Shield for a medical in Germany. If he takes a bit more time or doesn't accept, it's business as usual for Liverpool, and then they'll proceed to continue to have him in their squad, including potentially for that Community Shield game.
Now, Ben, there's been some developments, as far as you know, in the relationship between Eddie Howe and Alexander Isak. It's not great news for Newcastle fans, is it?
No, but I think Eddie Howe made it clear in Sol that nobody, regardless of whether this ends positively or negatively from Newcastle's perspective, can just come back to training. So this feels like Eddie Howe backing up his words with actions. And Howe is on record as saying no player, if they refuse to train or go on a pre-season tour, can come straight back in. So I think this is a message from Eddie Howe, not necessarily saying we're forcing you out the club, but that if you're going to stay, there has to be a reintegration, or alternatively, if you're going to go, it might suit all parties to do it sooner rather than later. And the challenge is, of course, sooner rather than later suits Isak. it might suit Eddie Howe, it might suit the existing group, but does it suit Newcastle United's hierarchy? Because they still need to find those replacements. And now it looks like Benjamin Sesko is off to Manchester United and not Newcastle. Is there still going to be a delay? And I think the next clue is the most important one, because it's one thing throwing a barbecue as Eddie Howe's done today, saying to the whole group and their families, come and celebrate, it's a brand new season, and then having Alexander Isak coming after that. But if it goes on to tomorrow and Friday, and then you start thinking about Premier League fixtures and planning for the first game of the season, then all signs will point towards an Isak exit. If after this message has been sent, a quick reintegration happens, then I think more likely what will happen is Newcastle will seek their replacements. Liverpool will have to wait a little bit, but there obviously is still a very realistic chance with Isak pushing to join Liverpool that he does end up at Anfield. It's purely about timing and ultimately whether Liverpool are prepared to go above that first £110 million offer and how high, because we know Liverpool said 120, some say 130, but still Newcastle sources give this number of 150. So it's a fascinating saga, but there's definitely several twists and turns still to go.
Fantastic. It's like the idea of Alexander Isak turning up at the barbecue and everybody sort of looking at their shoes, not knowing what to say.
Very dramatic. Feels very EastEnders, doesn't it?
He rocks up like nothing's happened. Yeah, it's great. Brilliant, Ben. Thank you very much. We'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, guys.
There we are. It's all the latest in the transfer market. It looks like, he is training alone at the moment. And I mean, understandably, from Eddie Howe's point of view, he just wants to get on with it, doesn't he? Get on with the season and get players that want to be there playing for the team. It's difficult.
I mean, realistically, I don't know how there can be a way back for Isak at Newcastle. No. Really?
I mean, remember years and years ago, we kept hearing about Wayne Rooney at Manchester United. He wants out. It's done. There's no way. And then he signed a new contract. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but you know what football's like. Anything could happen still.
Paul Hawksby and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.